not a lot of time left, so let's gonna go through this real quick. System status, just some general information in the system, the network, WAN, LAN IPs. SIP registration, you can see the external registrations to the SIP trunk, and here I've got I'm registered to sip.flowroute.com. They've given me the account, the username, password, and it is registered. So they now know my my IP address, and they're going to start sending me calls to my DID. All right, IP lines registration shows all my extensions. Just have a couple of phones on my system, and only a couple phones registered. It tells me the IP address. And by the way, this registration, those phones, once they register, they will need to register again every hour. Okay, so just because they register once doesn't mean they're good to go. Every hour they need to re-register, otherwise they go unregistered. And when they're unregistered, any incoming calls would go directly to the voicemail box. All right, other tabs here, you can look at your call history, choose your CDR records. You can, we're not going to go through all those. Let's jump to maintenance and diagnostics. So you can run network diagnostics. If you're using FXO ports, I highly recommend that you connect those POTS lines, connect those to the system, to the FXO ports, and then run your FXO diagnostics to optimize those lines to the system. You definitely want to do that. It might minimize any echo, DTMF problems, things like that. So definitely, that's a word of advice. All right. You can also download your system logs from here. Anytime you report a problem to us, we will ask for the system logs, especially if you can reproduce the problem. So you can download them from here. Next is your security diagnostics. Okay, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work on a security front. You can run a security audit on the system. It will check all different settings, firewall settings, IP lines, extensions, comes back with a report. You can show the report, and at this point, firewall set to, or the security level set for medium. No security flaws on the firewall. All my IP phones have good strong passwords. If they didn't, if there were some using 1, 2, 3, 4, they would be highlighted in this report. Call routing tables. All my call routing tables are secured. Okay, if I did not have some with where the source type was set for PBX, those would be highlighted. Some extensions have some options on them and have a weak password. Some admin settings are a little weak as well. All right, so again, run your report, especially when you're done configuring the office. Take a look at it, make sure there's just to see if the system identifies any areas of concern. Call capture, you can run a capture on our FXS or FXO ports. Network capture, you can do this on, it'll do a packet capture on either the LAN or WAN interface. And the packet capture could be opened directly through Wireshark. You can also do a ping and a trace route, okay, so those are available. Looking at system logs, prior to making a test call, you can come in here and click system log settings, and there's a box where you could do, say for example, like test 1, and hit enter, and then click mark all logs, and that's going to give you a reference point for the start of your test call, and it'll help you find the call, especially if you're making a call and you're making several calls, and we need to know where the good call started and where the bad call started, for example. so you can identify that. And then you go to your system logs tab. Also on that same page, the previous page, you can also download the system logs. So you mark the logs, make your test call, download the logs right there, and get that information to us. The log file is compressed in a WinRAR, R-A-R, WinRAR format. It contains hundreds of log buffers, and so we ask that you download the full set of logs. Okay, then you can see there's a you can look at different buffers, SIP registration, SIP user agent. Some of these, and there's a scroll bar at the right, and you can see here's our comment, a log marker at the very bottom of the page, waiting for the next call. You'll be able to identify it. Just find your log marker, and that will be the start of the new call. User rights management. This is where you can define, change your system password. You can also enable that second administrator called local admin. You can turn that on. You can also define roles where local administrator, for example, is only allowed to access certain areas within the system. By default, everything's granted, but you can limit that access. Okay, next is backup and restore. All right, 1 second. All right, just had to grab some water there. Backup and restore, this is where you're going to save your configuration file. All right, a few things about the configuration file that's important to note. Okay, it's very easy to save the system configuration. Let's mention that right at the outset. You just come in here, press download, it'll save the configuration, it'll give you a file, you save it to your PC. Only takes about 30 seconds or so, maybe if that. And so it's very easy to save your configuration. After you've saved your configuration, and if for some reason you need to restore it, you can restore it using the restore previously saved configuration, and it'll allow you to upload it. Just keep in mind you can only restore that configuration file to the same firmware version that it was saved on initially, or a newer firmware version. Can't save a config and then restore it to an older firmware version. And yes, you can save a config on one QX200 and restore it on another QX200. Same goes for a QX50 to a 200, but not the same for like a QX20 to a QX50, let's say. A different platform. All right, the system configuration will save all your system settings, of course. It also has all your greeting messages, all the auto tenant greeting messages. It does not contain voicemails. Okay, so if you need to restore your configuration file, you'll come up without any voicemails on any of your extensions. But the greeting messages will be there. All right. You can also set this on an automatic backup. So you can put this on a schedule, and it can be sent to your email. Here's your email address, and you can put it on a schedule so that every Sunday night at midnight, in my office, I receive an email. Attached to that email is my configuration file. It's about 4 megabytes, 4 or 5 megabytes maybe. Of course, it's going to vary based on the number of extensions and all your options and everything else that you have. All right, the firmware update, real important. As soon as you get our system out of the box, you want to check the firmware. Okay, you know that systems are manufactured, they get put on our shelf, they get sent to distributors, they get set on their shelf, and then you purchase the unit. You know, it could be a couple months old, and in that time frame we've updated and posted new software. Sometimes there's some important updates, especially pertaining to IP phones. So you don't want to be fighting a problem and then find out that there is a new software version for it. Okay, so first thing you want to do is out of the box update to the latest firmware. Okay, just do it every time. All right, it's very easy to do. Okay, you just there's a couple methods of updating your system firmware. Okay, it's a two-step or three-step process, and let me explain what I mean by that. Okay, by default it's a three-step process. All right, and by that what I mean is you go in here and do the manual firmware update. First thing you do is go to our website, of course, support portal, download that latest software, download it to your PC, and then after you've done that, now you come in here and do the manual firmware update. Step one, save your configuration. That's just good common sense. We also give you the option to do that right here if you haven't done so lately. Save your existing configuration. That way you've got a copy of it should you ever need it. All right. Step two would be to complete the firmware update. You just click, choose the file, and press save, and it will upload that firmware to the system. It'll do a reboot. The whole process takes maybe 4 to 5 minutes. What takes longer is for the phones, the system will go around and reboot all the phones. It will do that automatically. That way they can re-register. Okay, as part of the firmware update process, we will use the memory, some of that memory that was previously being used and saved for voicemails and greetings and all that. Some of that memory will be used as part of the software update. Okay, so step 3 would be to restore your configuration file. That way you can restore all your greeting messages. All right. So as I mentioned before, you're going to come up, you're not going to have any voicemails after the firmware update is complete. Okay, I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal. Most people have all their voicemails in their inbox because they're doing voicemail to email, so it's not an issue. But I understand the sensitivity around that. So let me give you a better option, and that is as soon as you get these units, before you install them on a site, go ahead and get yourself a small SD memory card. Okay, it's 8 gigabit. You don't have to go crazy. 8 gigabit, if you can even find them that small. It's going to give you more than enough memory, plenty of memory. If you have to go to a 16 gigabit, maybe even a 32, but we don't recommend anything larger than that. All right, so it's easy to install the SD memory card, power the unit down, insert the memory card, power the unit down, power the unit down, insert the memory card, now power the unit back up, and that SD card will be, all that memory will be allocated and available. And all your voicemails and greeting messages are now saved on that SD card. Okay, so as you might figure, that's going to help out when you do your firmware updates. So now to do a firmware update, you go in, save the configuration, perform the software update, and at that point you're done. You have not lost any voicemails, you haven't lost any greeting messages, everything is there. Makes for a very easy software update process. You could do it during the day. It's our software updates, knock on wood, are rock solid, and they have been for many years. I've never had a problem with doing software updates in the middle even during the day. But it also allows you to also perform an automatic firmware update. Okay, especially knowing that they're not going to lose any greetings and you're not going to have to restore a configuration file. You can schedule this to occur automatically at night, and you can schedule when it will occur. By default, it's set for, you go to this automatic firmware update, and it's set to check, and the default is to set check and notify. So all it's going to do is going to go out every night, whatever time frame you specify. It's going to go out, check to see if there's new firmware posted on our server. If there is, it'll notify you in the system event logs. All right. If you change a setting to check and perform the update, then not only will it check to see if there's new software, if there is, it'll download it, it'll receive it, it'll perform the software update, and since you have that SD memory card, everything's there, your voicemails are all there, and it won't take that long to do it. So you can schedule it in the middle of the night, do the software update, and then just check on it in the morning. Everything should be fine. You can also do so, this little check now button, you can perform that update, so it'll go in, check, see if the update's available, and either notify you or perform the update. It'll perform the action as identified above. All right, next, lastly is the reboot option. If you need to reboot the system, you can do so and reboot the office. All right, that takes us to the end. Good timing. So I want to thank everybody for their participation. I know it was a very long call. I appreciate you listening and joining in.